Today's conversation is one that I think will land very directly for a lot of you, especially if you tend to feel deeply, process a lot internally, and notice things that other people seem to miss. We're going to talk about empathic resilience and, more specifically, how to recharge your energy field in a world that is not designed for sensitivity. Because if you have been feeling unusually tired, emotionally full, or like your system is constantly switched on, even when you're trying to rest, there's a very real reason for that. And importantly, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because you're operating in an environment that is highly stimulating, emotionally loaded, and often completely unregulated, while your system is naturally designed to perceive more. Welcome back to Intuition on Tap. I'm your host, Heidi, and in this episode, I want to help you understand what is actually happening beneath the surface, where your energy may be leaking without you realizing, and how to rebuild your capacity in a way that is grounded, practical, and sustainable over time, because this work is not about becoming less sensitive. It's about becoming more supported in your sensitivity. So let's get to it. The silent energy drain, understanding hyperstimulation's impact. To begin, we need to look at the environment you are living in because context matters. The current digital and social landscape is one of constant input. You're exposed to notifications, messages, news, opinions, and emotional content at a rate that your nervous system was never designed to process continuously. Even if you believe you're simply checking your phone or catching up on content, your body is receiving a stream of stimuli that it must interpret and respond to in real time. Your nervous system does not categorize input as trivial or important in the way your thinking mind does, but instead it responds to tone, intensity, and perceived relevance to your safety and belonging. So what this means is that exposure to conflict, urgency, comparison, fear-based messaging, or even heightened excitement can activate your system in subtle but cumulative ways. If you are empathic or highly sensitive, this effect is then amplified. You're not only taking in the information itself, but also the emotional charge behind it. You may notice the underlying tension in someone's voice, the pressure behind the message, or the emotional state embedded within content. This is not something you consciously decide to do. It's an automatic perceptual process. And over time, this leads to what I would describe as emotional and energetic saturation. You may not feel overwhelmed in a single moment, but your system is carrying layers and layers and layers of input that have not been fully processed or released. And this is why you might experience a persistent sense of fatigue that's not really resolved by sleep, an emotional heaviness without really a clear source, difficulty switching off mentally even when you are physically resting. So think you're lying in your bed and your mind is still going 1,000 miles an hour. A sense of being on alert or subtly tense throughout the day. So many people interpret this as burnout or assume that they need to push through it because, well, that's what we're told in our society, unfortunately. But what is actually happening is that your nervous system is attempting to keep up with an unsustainable level of stimulation. So the first important reframe here is this: you're not overreacting to your environment. You are undersupported within it. So once you understand that, you can then begin to respond differently. mapping your energetic boundaries, or where do you leak? The next step is to identify where your energy is going, because energy depletion is rarely caused by one large event. It is usually the result of repeated smaller leaks that occur throughout the day, the week, the months, the years. One of the most common sources of energetic leakage is unstructured digital consumption. So, in other words, your phones, your laptops, your iPads, your devices. Because when you scroll through social media, you are moving rapidly between different emotional states and environments. So, what I mean by that is you might encounter inspiration, comparison, distressing news, humor, terror, and personal stories within a very short time frame. Your nervous system does not reset between these exposures. Instead, it accumulates them. And this creates a kind of internal noise that you may not consciously register, but you will feel the effects of it later as fatigue or irritability or hyperstimulation. Another significant area of energy leakage is relational dynamics. So, your relationships, or the people that you spend the most time with. And if you tend to be the person who listens deeply, holds space, and anticipates other people's needs, you may also be taking on the emotional responsibility that is actually not yours to carry. I hear from a lot of empaths all the time that people are just drawn to them. So they might just be standing at the checkout in the supermarket, and all of a sudden, unprovoked, a person will just start revealing their deepest, darkest secrets or their life story to them. That's what I'm talking about. You don't actually ask for it, but you tend to get dumped on anyway. And so, without knowing if this is yours or not to actually carry, this can create a real difficulty. And it's what I refer to as the empathic sponge pattern. It occurs when you move beyond awareness of another person's emotional state and you begin to internalize it. What I mean by this is you might notice that after certain conversations, you feel heavier, perhaps you're more anxious or more drained, even if nothing directly happened to you. Over time, this pattern can lead to emotional congestion, where your system is holding multiple layers of unprocessed emotional information. To begin shifting this, I want you to introduce a simple daily reflection. At the end of your day, ask yourself, what am I still carrying right now that does not belong to me? You're not trying to fix it or analyze it or figure it out. You are simply creating awareness. Because awareness is what allows you to begin separating your own internal state from what you have absorbed from others. And that separation is the foundation of healthy boundaries. I often say to my clients and students, you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself really, really well, because that helps to understand whether what you've taken on board belongs to you or actually you've just picked it up along the way. So now let's look at practical fortification, or building your energetic and emotional shield. So once you've identified where your energy is leaking, the next step is to strengthen your system so that it's not as easily depleted on a day-to-day basis. And this is not about shutting yourself off from the world, but about increasing your capacity to engage without absorbing everything. And it's a really interesting, I just want to share an interesting anecdote here. When I used to do a talk called the Empath Survival Guide at various festivals in Australia, one of the things that I would say to the crowd was, How often have you dreamed about getting a beautiful little cottage in the bush or in a forest or in nature where you can grow your own veggies, where you can have your animals, where you can just live in peace? And 75% of the empaths in the audience would be like, oh my gosh, how did she know? How did she know that I fantasize about that on a daily basis? It's, it's a wonderful thing to be able to have. No argument there. But actually, what I know to be true is I feel like that most empaths have that same kind of fantasy, if you want to call it, or dream, because they don't know how else to regulate their nervous systems. So they project out and think, well, if I'm just by myself with my animals and growing my own veggies, surrounded by nature, I'll be happy. And what they should actually be thinking is, well, that's going to regulate my nervous system. So, of course, I'm going to be happy. But what I want to introduce to you increasingly is that that's not available to everybody. So we have to learn how to regulate ourselves when we are living in a high impact, highly stimulated, modern world. So as I was saying, when your nervous system is overstimulated, the most immediate and effective tool for you to be able to really manage that overstimulation is breath regulation, because your breathing becomes shallow and rapid when you have nervous system overstimulation, which enforces that state of alertness. Like I've said in podcasts before, your primitive brain can't differentiate between the saber-toothed tiger and an inbox full of emails. It's the same level of threat potentially. And so that's what we have to become very mindful about. So by intentionally slowing your breath, you send that signal to your body that it's safe to relax. And a simple technique you can use is inhaling through your nose for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and then exhaling slowly for 6. That extended exhale is particularly important because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and restoration. Practicing this for even a few minutes can create a noticeable shift in your internal state. For those of you who have ever practiced yoga, following your breath, you know exactly what I mean. Cyclical breathing. It really allows you to become present in your body. So from here, we move into intentional awareness. So we've got the breathing, and now we're going into intentional awareness. And before entering a stimulating environment, whether that's a social setting, a work interaction, or even opening your phone, take a moment to set a clear internal boundary. So what I mean by that is you might say something like this to yourself: I can be present without absorbing everything around me. Or, it is not my job to feel or fix other people's problems for them. This is not about pretending you are unaffected. It's about consciously choosing your level of engagement. And over time, this creates a different relationship between you and your environment. You move from passive absorption to active awareness, which is another key component of fortification. And you add to this selective engagement, and then you're on the right track. And what I mean by selective engagement is you do not need to respond to every message immediately. You do not need to participate in every conversation that's going on around you. You do not need to consume every piece of information available to you. Remember what I say? Be informed, don't be inundated. Learning to notice your internal cues, such as subtle tension in your body, hesitation, or fatigue, allows you to step back before you reach a point of overwhelm. And this is where boundaries become preventative rather than reactive. Now let's look at recharging your core, or regenerative practices for empaths. If your system is already depleted, strengthening your boundaries is super important, but it's not sufficient on its own. You also need to actively replenish your energy. And this shift requires you to change from passive rest to intentional restoration. So one of the most effective ways to support your nervous system is through exposure to nature. Natural environments provide consistent, predictable sensory input, which allows your system to recalibrate. I like to say everything that we need for energetic restoration and clearing, etc., is contained in Mother Nature. So get your butt outside. Even if you're living in the middle of a large city, there's going to be some small area of nature that you can go and stand in, even if it's just standing in the sunshine for a few moments. Because as I said, one of the most effective ways to support your nervous system is through this exposure. Because natural environments provide consistent, predictable sensory input, which allows your system to recalibrate. And unlike digital environments, there's no urgency, there's no comparison, and there's no emotional demand. Nature does not demand this from you. Even short periods of time outdoors can reduce stress levels and improve your sense of internal balance. In addition to this, gentle movement plays a significant role in releasing stored tension. Emotional and energetic experiences are not only processed cognitively, they are also held in the body. So you might notice tightness in your shoulders, a heaviness in your chest, or even a sense of restlessness that is difficult to articulate. Movement does help to shift these patterns. And honestly, this does not need to be intensive, HIIT classes or exercise. It can be walking, stretching, or slow, mindful movement. But the key is consistency rather than intensity. And finally, incorporating small daily rituals can provide structure for your system. So these rituals, they don't need to be elaborate or time-consuming. They don't need to cost you any money or a lot of time. And they might just simply include a few minutes of stillness in the morning while you're drinking your cup of tea, maybe a conscious pause between activities, or a simple practice of releasing the day before you go to sleep. And to aid with this, I highly recommend that you have a shower before you go to bed. So what matters is that they are consistent. And over time, these practices create a sense of safety, stability, and predictability within your body, which then allows your system, specifically your nervous system, return to baseline more easily. So now let's look at sustaining your spark, or long-term empathic resilience. Long-term resilience is not about continually recovering from overwhelm. It's about reducing how often you reach that point. And this requires a deeper shift in how you relate to your energy, your boundaries, and your identity. One of the most important aspects of this is developing your ability to say no. I know it's very difficult for us empaths to do that. But because it's challenging, because there's a strong tendency to prioritize harmony and avoid discomfort. In other words, we don't want to upset anybody. And so we take the upset ourselves and we swallow that down, which is not good. It's not healthy. Because every time you override your own capacity in order to meet external expectations, you are actually creating a cost for your system. Learning to say no without over-explaining or justifying your decision is a form of self-respect. It allows you to preserve your energy for what genuinely matters. And in addition to this, having access to supportive environments is essential, because when you're surrounded by people who understand your sensitivity, you do not need to expend energy explaining or minimizing your experience. I'm going to invite you to do a bit of a challenge. So next time you say no to someone, notice what your body does. Notice what your mind does. Do you feel an instant need to over-explain the reasons why you can't do it, or why you've said no, or why you've created that boundary? And if so, don't judge yourself. Just notice it. Just become aware. And so that perhaps next time you say no, that reduces somewhat. And so you'll build up that muscle of being able to say no over time. So just keep doing it. Just keep saying no and explaining less, because I think we all know by now that no is a complete sentence. But honestly, this is one of the reasons I also created the Empath AF community. It's a space where you can explore these concepts and share your experiences and feel understood in the way that you process the world uniquely as an empath or highly sensitive person. And another powerful support tool is the Oracle GPT within the Oracle Field community, which gives you a structured way to check in with yourself, regulate your state, and gain clarity without becoming overwhelmed by external input. It's designed to support your intuition in a grounded and practical way. And this leads then to the final shift I want to leave you with. Your sensitivity is not the problem. It is the lack of structure, regulation, and boundaries around that sensitivity that creates the difficulty. When those elements are in place, your sensitivity becomes an actual strength. You're able to perceive more clearly, respond more intentionally, and trust your intuition without becoming overwhelmed by it. So, if you take one thing from today's episode, I invite you to let it be this. You do not need to reduce your sensitivity in order to feel better. You don't need to live in a cottage in the forest, surrounded by only animals. You need to increase the level of support your system receives. And that means becoming more aware of what you're taking on, more intentional with your boundaries, and more consistent with your restoration practices. This is how empathic resilience is built. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to like and subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear this. I'd really love to get this information out to as many sensitive people as possible. And of course, if you're ready to go deeper, you can always explore the Empath AF community, or you can spend time with the Oracle GPT inside the Oracle Field. Both of these are designed to help you integrate this work into your daily life in a way that actually creates change. The links for both of these are in the comments below, in the description below, or in my bio. And as always, remember, regulation first, intuition second, and I will see you in the next episode.